Hi, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brian. So today we're going to just talk about how we can take the lessons of jiu-jitsu from the mat and apply them off the mat into our everyday lives. So just a little bit about me. My background's in math and physics, computer science, so I'm very much like on the logical side of stuff. And that comes out a lot in the way I think, especially the math part of it. Math is all about pattern recognition, recognizing what's going on, having that fundamental understanding, taking that, abstracting away whatever you can, and then moving it over and reapplying it to different situations. And I do that kind of in everything in my life. I really like philosophy. I read a lot about different types of philosophy, and you start to see these themes over and over again, especially in the language that we use. And the same thing happens in jiu-jitsu. I'm reading a book right now called Gödel Bach, which was written, I think, in the 80s somewhere. It's a while ago. And it's all about recursion. So recursion is essentially self-reference. If you guys are into computer science or you've ever programmed before, I have a function called, foo. And then within that function, I call itself again. And so, I run foo and then I call foo. So it has to jump back to the top, and then I run it and it calls again. And the cool thing with recursion is it allows you to break a big problem down into smaller problems, to the point where you can solve those smaller problems and then build those solutions back up again to where you have your final answer. And we see the same thing going on in jiu-jitsu, right? This is called chunking, by the way. When you're first learning jiu-jitsu, you don't know what a hip out is, you don't know what a bridge is, you don't understand any of the terminology like Kimura, Americana, footlock. And so when you're first starting off, you're just learning these individual pieces at the very bottom. You're creating that foundation. Then once you get those ideas down, you understand closed guard, open guard, side control. Then you start building sequences out of those positions. So the individual moves are something like letters in our language, and then we can start to build words by creating sequences. So instead of me telling you if you're going to do a Kimura, instead of saying, go to side control, grab the arm, put your arm under their arm, grab your own arm, make an L, bend it the wrong way. Now I can just say, do a Kimura, and to do all those steps. And then once you get comfortable with the words, you can start building sentences. So instead of me saying, Toriando pass to side control, Kimura, I can give that whole thing a sequence. So, like the Hidalgo sequence or something like this. And then I say, okay, just do the Hidalgo sequence. And now you know that grouping. And once you know those groupings, you can make it even higher. And so from these fundamental aspects, you're able to start building up your entire game out of them. So for me personally, this is one of the things that I've been able to really take from the mat into life and reapply it, that abstract and reapply. Whenever I'm facing a problem in life now, okay, I have this big goal. I'm trying to start a company this year, a software company. How do you do that? I don't know. That's too big of a task. So you start breaking it down into these smaller tasks, understanding what's going on at the bottom levels, writing the first bits of code, playing with your ideas, combining those into your higher level. Once you have those foundations down, you can build a code library, if you know what that is. And then I have a whole library to build off of. So now my next level up, instead of having to reprogram everything, I have these little building blocks that I can just rearrange and put back together in different ways to play with how my program is working. Then once I have those building blocks together, I'm happy with my program. Now I have to go to the business side and figure out, okay, like what's my market? How do I get this out to the public? Who wants to use this? What's my niche? And so you start again at the bottom here, right? So I'm going to be doing like client interviews and figuring out who's actually interested in using it and how they want to use it, and building up my client base and my client profiles and my use cases. And then once I have both of those components, I can start to merge them. And then it might trickle back down where I have to rearrange some things here, bring it back up, rearrange some things here, bring it back up. So for me, that's been one of the most powerful things jiu-jitsu's taught me. We also have all the kind of basic stuff of like, builds confidence, gives you self-esteem, all this sort of stuff. But I think we've all been doing jiu-jitsu here long enough that we kind of have an idea of all that stuff, and we've felt it in our lives already. So what I wanted to do with this a little bit is make it a bit of a discussion. If you guys have any ideas about, even if it's these obvious things of like how, it's built your confidence and you've seen it affect different parts of your lives. I love hearing about that stuff because for me, I grew up in jiu-jitsu. I've been doing it since I was 11. So it's really interesting for me to hear from people who started as an adult where it wasn't always part of their life, right? Like all I know is a life with jiu-jitsu. So I think it's really interesting to hear from people who started as adults where it came into their lives and how they felt that effect and where you've seen it kind of cross over off the mat. So I don't know if you guys have anything right off the bat that you want to share that comes to mind about that stuff.
I started jiu-jitsu when I was 28.
Nice.
And I wasn't that happy at the time. I just broke up with a girlfriend and I was kind of in this phase of partying too much, but knew that I didn't want to continue doing that. I'm almost 30. I need to grow up a little bit. So jiu-jitsu was, I just kind of found jiu-jitsu. I didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a gym, a martial arts academy, and they did boxing, Thai boxing and judo, which I got into, but jiu-jitsu was the one that really I connected with and stuck with. And just really threw myself into it. I went to train like once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week.
Heck yeah.
Then I started training 6 times a week. And yeah, just really completely absorbed myself in it.
Mm-hmm.
Which helped me forget this bad breakup I'd had and this, it all seems like completely insignificant looking back at the things I was worried about then. But that time it was really useful. I think Globetrotters as an organisation is, I guess in Jiu-Jitsu you have these other little communities, and Globetrotters has been a really amazing one to be connected with, allowing me to meet so many interesting people from all over the world, make great connections. I feel like I could go anywhere in the world now and be able to roll with someone, hang out with somebody. So that's kind of maybe the biggest gift that I got from Jiu-Jitsu, besides the fitness and actually being able to do Jiu-Jitsu well, is connecting with people, and that network of people is just really powerful.
I think that is one of the coolest things with Jiu-Jitsu. So I did my bachelor's, and when I finished my bachelor's, I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. I did I said I was into math. When I was 7, I was like, I'm going to be a mathematician. And I followed that. I was really lucky. I got to go to university early because it was right up the hill from my high school. So I actually finished my bachelor's degree in a couple years, and I had 2 years extra. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to get a head start on my PhD. Just go straight in, PhD, graduate, go be like a professor or whatever, and make some cool breakthroughs in mathematics. And I started doing graduate classes in math, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This sucks. So from the time I was 7 to 20 had all been math, 13 years. And then I kind of had this realization of oh shit, I don't want to do this. I need something else. So I played around with computer science and physics, like I said. And when I graduated, I was still I can't imagine myself doing any of these things as a career. So at the time, I was the head instructor at our academy. I was like, let's just see where jiu-jitsu takes me. So I started competing seriously and traveling around and all that sort of stuff. Lived in Brazil for a little bit, went to Mexico, lived there for a bit, went over to Myanmar for a little bit, and just you get to meet so many different people and interact with so many different people. You really start to figure out, like, you know, as a personality, if I put you in different situations, you're going to behave differently. Right now, we're all fairly casual, like small group of people just chatting. If I put you in a business room with Elon Musk and Bill Gates, your demeanor is going to change real quick, right? If I put you in a room with, I don't know, whoever your presidents are, or, you know, political leaders. I'm American, so for me, it's not so great right now. Right? Your demeanor is going to be different in that situation as well. And the same goes with jiu-jitsu. Like, we have such an international community here with Globetrotters especially, or if you just travel, like, you can walk into jiu-jitsu club anywhere, and you're going to have a different personality of that jiu-jitsu club. And you're going to kind of have to figure out how you fit in and how you react to those different circumstances. And I think the cool thing about that is, this is going back to like the very sciencey part of me, right? If you think of yourself as like a thing with lots of variables, right? So I have inputs and I give out outputs. If I'm in one situation, I'm getting a certain type of input and I'm giving out a certain type of output. You change that situation, different inputs, different outputs. But what you can do is you can look at, okay, what changed between the inputs, what changed between the outputs, and really kind of figure out what those overlaps are. And figure out, like, okay, who am I, like, as a core person? When you really have to deal with all these different varieties of people and you get to notice what stays consistent in every situation, I think that that's really powerful, finding out, like, who you are real deep down as a core person. And hopefully you like that person, right? And if not, you know, it's a good opportunity for self-reflection to be like, I didn't like how I handled that situation, or I seem to end up in this situation a lot, and I never like how the outcome is. And so you can really take that opportunity of dealing with all these different people, different situations, and figuring out, okay, I like this about myself, I don't like this about myself, I'd rather behave like this, and start making those changes. And, you know, just bringing that back to jiu-jitsu, right? Everything in jiu-jitsu is situational, right? My partner's arm is like this. I do Americana. He starts to straighten. I switch to armbar. He starts to bend it again. I go Kimura, right? So I'm always in reaction to my partner. But we have those building blocks that we can always go back to. So at that foundational level, we have our core movements like hipping out, bridging. And it doesn't matter what position I'm in. If I'm on bottom, side control, mount, half guard, I'm going to use my bridge. Like, that's a core foundation of jiu-jitsu. And that's going to be a consistent thing for us. So we better really like how we bridge, and we better be really good at how we bridge. So I think that's a cool way to think about that and transfer it into these kind of like larger life lessons and stuff. And I was also talking to James before, and he was saying, like, I didn't feel like it was a good community fit where he was originally at his school. Which, like, you want to fit in at your jiu-jitsu community. That's a big part of it, right? Like, why do people quit gyms? Because they're going there alone, running on a treadmill, watching TV. Like, there's nothing interesting about that, right? Like, the great thing about jiu-jitsu is it builds a support structure where instead of saying, I have to go to the gym, you say, I get to go to the gym. It's an opportunity. And, but I think it is good. I've trained at some gyms that I haven't fit in well, and it's not to say anything against the gym. There are some bad gyms out there, right? You have to be careful you're not going to get hurt and stuff. But sometimes you just don't fit into a situation that well. And you kind of have to figure out, like, okay, what's my best play here? Like, how do I adjust to this situation? And like, just in the language that we use for these sorts of things, you can already see the overlap between, like, kind of like life philosophy and jiu-jitsu. Like, how do I adjust to a situation? You don't know whether I'm talking about, like, being at a nightclub in a shitty situation or in a tournament, right? So there's a lot of overlap. Anybody else have something that is popping to head that they want to share?
I think reflection is the right word that you just used.
Yeah.
It really still teaches me, because like I'm 27 now, 4 or 5 months in. So, but really taking the time after each roll to think about like, what the fuck did I do wrong? And then just a month ago, I was like having like the insight that, am I actually doing that in life? No, I'm just like powering through.
Yeah.
Never looking back, never looking why things are the way they are. And, I think that's a really powerful thing that it has taught me so far.
That's awesome. And right in jiu-jitsu, it's never like, I got armbarred, what did I do wrong? Like, I got armbarred.
Yeah.
That's not, right? It happened like 2, 3, 4 steps before, right? You have to look at like, what were you doing beforehand that set the situation up where your partner could get an armbar, right? And just going off of this, like I've had these kind of long-term goals that I've been going after, like starting a business is one of them. And I wanted to do that. So after I took that break in to do jiu-jitsu, I figured out I want to work in solar energy. So I found a master's program and did 2 years in the Netherlands on solar energy, and now I'm doing my PhD in new solar materials. So it's been about 4 years since the time I was like, I want to start a company. And I still don't have one, but it's kind of been in the back of my head, like, okay, how do I get to this point? What do I need to do to set myself up for success as a business? And so all through like my master's program and starting my PhD, like I told my advisors, like, I don't want to go into academia. I want to start my own company. Like that's my goal. I don't care about publishing. I just want to start a company. And so you start thinking about these things preemptively, and it's not like this super hard push like you were saying, but it's kind of in the back of your head, always churning back there. Like, what's my next move? How am I going to set myself up for the next small step forward towards this big goal? Right, just like in jiu-jitsu, like if you guys have ever competed before, it's common to go in with a game plan, especially if you start to know your opponents. If you compete a lot, you'll see the same guys over and over again. So you're like, okay, I know he's going to pull guard. I know he's going to set up spider guard and try to like shoot his hips up and triangle me or armbar me, or maybe he has more of a sweep game. Like I know he's going to do that. So I start thinking beforehand, like, how am I going to set myself up? One, to not let him do that, or to capitalize off of his movements, or two, to set up my own game before he has the ability to set his game up. And it's kind of taking this more, this longer arch on that sort of thinking. Anything else? Cool. Yeah.
One thing I get is like a pick your battles type lesson.
Yeah.
I'm not, if I'm going to get someone in a sub, it's because they're already broken down. Or I'm not going to, if I'm going to get them in an armbar, it's because my legs are stronger than their arm, and that's why that works.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty handy in a lot of other situations as well.
Oh yeah, especially if you're in a relationship, right? Like, why waste your energy arguing over who forgot the milk? Like, there are bigger things to deal with, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's another cool thing with jiu-jitsu. Like, we're always under pressure in jiu-jitsu, right? Like, I always have some sweaty dude's chest pressing against my face, making me uncomfortable. And I learn how to time my reactions, right? Like, if my partner's putting a lot of pressure on me, I'm not going to try to go crazy and get out of that. Like, I'm going to wait for my opening a little bit. And so it's not only picking your battles, but picking when to act on those battles.
And when you should relax.
Yeah.
When you start training in that situation, you're freaking out because there's someone just pressing down on you and you're trapped. You feel helpless, you go crazy. But after you've trained a few years, you're like, okay, this isn't the time I just need to relax.
Yeah.
Chill, breathe. So this is definitely a lesson that transfers into life. Sometimes when you're in really tricky situations, is to just relax. And
Definitely.
Wait for the right time to do your thing.
Yeah. Especially with the small stuff, right? Like, I know my partner's not going to submit me here, so I can just like chill. I know if my partner forgot the milk, me yelling at them is not going to make the situation better. Like, I can just chill. I'll go out, get the milk, or I'll ask them to get it tomorrow. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It'll rectify itself. And then, like, when bigger stuff comes up, it also has more of an impact because you haven't wasted all of that credibility on the small stuff where it's just like, right, your brain's very bad at picking apart how important something is. It's only good at picking apart how loud you're screaming, yeah? So, one thing you also mentioned, James, was the leverage. Like, right, jiu-jitsu is all about leverage and angles and this sort of stuff. And right now, my head is in like a very business-oriented space because I'm just starting to finish up the software I'm working on. And so I'm starting to think more about like, how do I pivot more to the business side and get this out to people? And so like from a business perspective, right, leverage is an amazing tool to have. And right, how do you position yourself in such a way that you can optimize your resources towards your goals? And the thinking's a little bit different right now. It's not like body positioning relative to another person, but it might be, market strategy or thinking about what makes your product different from other people and highlighting that in your marketing and advertising, or positioning yourself in front of a niche that can use your product in a particular way that they haven't thought to use it before, or that fulfills a need that they don't have fulfilled yet. So I think it's crazy to me, like I said, I grew up in jiu-jitsu, and I've always had this type of like abstract and reapply, so it's always been kind of there for me in the background of doing it kind of even subconsciously. And just having this discussion, you're like, wow, there's a lot of stuff I can learn from jiu-jitsu, like not just on the mats, but it spills over.
I think I would have gone into yoga if I hadn't first done jiu-jitsu.
Yeah?
It definitely led me into that path.
How so?
I remember once training and just having this amazing feeling. I'd rolled for like an hour, just had a really, just kind of, it was like a meditation, I guess, looking back. Just in the zone, not thinking about anything off the mats, and just rolling. And I remember sitting against the wall and just being like, oh, I feel like something amazing was inside me. Mm-hmm. It was more than just like an endorphin rush or something like that. I was like, wow, it's kind of like a religious experience or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Okay, I need to like Google this. If anyone else felt this? Then I started seeing people posting about Zen and martial arts, and then I started like learning about how all martial arts are basically connected to Buddhism. If you follow it back, it all begins at like Shaolin Temple, and as Buddhism went east, martial arts went east, and then got into like meditating. And I always thought I might try yoga, but I'd do it when I was old. When I finish jiu-jitsu, I'll probably try yoga. But then around that same time, someone gave me a free ticket for a yoga class.
Oh, cool.
I went and did the class and I was hooked.
Heck yeah.
Like trying jiu-jitsu, I just went in the first time and came out and was like, okay, this needs to be part of my life now.
That's awesome.
So yeah, jiu-jitsu came first, and I think without jiu-jitsu, I never would have walked into yoga studio.
Yeah.
So I guess in that respect, it kind of opens you up to trying new things as well.
Definitely. I mean, right, the hardest thing of starting jiu-jitsu is starting, like walking in the door your first day, especially like it's an intimidating sport. Like, we're all bigger guys here, so for us, it's even easier. But like, imagine being like a 22-year-old college girl who's like 5'3". What is that in meters? 1.5 meters for those of you in the metric system. Like, you weigh 95 pounds, like 40 kilos, something like this, and you walk in and you see like me standing there. It's like, I don't know if this is for me. I think that's the cool thing about the jiu-jitsu community as well, is like, how do you get your blue belt in jiu-jitsu? You definitely don't get it by beating up other blue belts, right? You get it when you can help other white belts become a blue belt. I think that's one of the unique things about jiu-jitsu that makes it like the community so strong, and like you can walk into any jiu-jitsu academy and just like it's a second family.
Yeah, pretty much.
You mentioned you read Zen and Martial Arts, yeah? Kyle?
Joe Hyman.
Yeah? What do you think of it?
That was fantastic. That was actually the first book that my sensei had recommended me.
Oh, heck yeah.
Fantastic read. And I like that.
I think I've read that one.
Yeah, I like that you brought up that like kind of religious experience. I feel like, I don't know how appropriate this is, but high rollers BJJ. I like to smoke a lot before I go roll, and that's always how I roll. I'm just in the zone, and I'm just like bending and going with it, and it's so tranquil, and that's like my ideal. I think.
Heck yeah.
And I think I carry that into like even just sitting here. I wasn't sure if I was going to speak. I was going to play the observer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like what you guys are saying.
Heck yeah.
Are you that high right now as well?
No. Just fighting the blade a little bit.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think that's kind of overlooked in BJJ a little bit. Like in traditional martial arts, they talk more about the Zen aspects of it and meditation. Like I think in karate, it's quite common to sit and meditate.
Right.
And whilst it's really cool, jiu-jitsu is kind of the new kid and it's really casual and a lot of traditions have been forgotten.
Yeah.
I think that message, it would be good if people understood that message. Because I think that could help people a bit more in the community as well. To know that there is like it's inextricably linked to like Zen Buddhism effectively. Because some of my friends see jiu-jitsu as being about conflict and about doing something violent. So I think that's disappointing if they think, oh, I'm going to go and fight someone.
Mm-hmm.
I see it as more, I'm going to go fight myself.
Yeah.
Like the enemy is kind of up here, not someone else on the mass.
And it might be different for people that are doing it longer, but I rarely roll with someone that is actually exactly my level. You're always just a bit better or just a bit worse. So you're actually, or at least how I experience it, you're actually almost none of the times you're really fighting. One person is always teaching the other one, and depends on who you are, but it's super rare to find someone that you're actually going toe to toe with, and so I think that's a good thing as well. That you're actually, it's not really competing; it's more teaching each other in a weird way.
Sounds like you've been quite lucky.
I have a few rivals.
Learning how to roll is something which I think takes like a long time. Because I know just whenever you're rolling up like towards the end of class or something, there's the people who grab on and you're like, okay, we're going to have a bit of a battle here. And then usually or more frequently you might have a dumb injury. You love them, you love those proper battles, but also the more playful, the more experimental ones. If I know I'm better than someone, I like to beat them, but not crush them. It's just, give them a work too.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't actually understand that for a long time. Maybe, like I said, I rolled lots of purple belts who, like when I was a white belt, were like rough, which is fine. It is what it is, but it's probably a lot worse for other people.
Old school, right?
Yeah. Just crying. Yeah, I don't mind a bit of crushing though. Sometimes. Yeah.
It's it's a cool way to like the variation in intensity helps a lot, right? Like you have those guys where like, okay, you can just flow roll and be chill, and then you have those guys that you go toe to toe with, and it's not like an aggressive rivalry, right? But it's like you're competing against each other, trying to make each other better and like pushing each other up the whole time.
Yeah. I'm also a big Muay Thai guy.
Cool.
And that, that's totally different game. That's where I get my animal out. I'm not going with my Muay Thai. But when I find myself out of Muay Thai for a while, a bit of that squirreliness will definitely show itself in Jiu-Jitsu. Like, until I get it out of my system, and then I get back to the Zen.
I'm trying to think of like two good animals that would represent that. Like you got like the panda bear side for the jiu-jitsu and like I don't know, a monkey for Muay Thai or something, going crazy.
The monkey's the best example. That's Hanuman is like the representation of Muay Thai.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool also, like, I'm trying to remember who said it. Some author or philosopher, I don't remember. They were like, explore your dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Jung talks a lot about that.
all right, cool. I think that's like, when I was doing jiu-jitsu a lot, I was also doing CrossFit. And one of our main professors was like, he called it going to the dark place. Like, I don't know if you guys have done CrossFit, but some of those workouts are brutal. Like, you just have to dig down and like accept the suffering. He would call that like, get ready to go to the dark place. It's like, okay. And it's kind of that same thing, like, where you just kind of go into that like raw animalistic form, and like the outside layer, the gray matter of your brain shuts off a little bit, and you just like totally instinctual. You just start like throwing weights up in the air and stuff. Yeah, it's cool. Like, you can probably tell I'm fairly intellectual about this sort of stuff, but in competition, you don't get that luxury. Like in training, you get to kind of chill out and like examine the position, look at where the grips are, the body positioning, and kind of like sort it out in your head as a puzzle as you're going. But when you're competing, right? Like, it's on when you're competing. You have to really tap into that other side. Or maybe if you're more on that like animalistic side already during training, like it can't always be like that, or you're never going to learn. You're going to hurt your partners. You're going to have nobody to train with. So you have to learn how to flip that switch back and forth as well, and really explore like those different sides of your personality. Anything else? Cool. Yeah, so hopefully, if you haven't thought about jiu-jitsu in this way yet, you can start thinking about it in this way. At my home academy, after every class, the professor will, line everybody up, stand in front. We give the announcements, and then we always have like a speech of the week, which is a themed speech. So, like the head of our academy will give the theme of the week, and then the instructors get to apply that theme to themselves personally and kind of how it's affected them. And, they say like teaching, as a teacher, you actually learn more than you give. And when I started teaching, that was one of the coolest things for me, is like really taking that time and like, we would get the theme of the week like 3 or 4 days beforehand. So it would come out like the Wednesday or Thursday before. And then you'd spend like Friday, Saturday, Sunday thinking like, oh God, what am I going to say about this theme? And you don't just get to say one thing, because you're teaching classes, 5 days a week, 6 days a week. Do you have to come up with 5 or 6 different things to say about that one little theme, and how it's always like how it goes from jiu-jitsu into the real world,
so
right?
This is something the instructors would do.
Yeah.
To their classes.
Exactly. And so, one, I think doing that sort of thinking really helps kind of bring like the Zen stuff and more like life lessons into the jiu-jitsu community, and helps build that community and make it a bit tighter. And also, like, knowing jiu-jitsu is great, right? Like, if somebody attacks me on the street, I'm good. If I feel like I need to defend somebody on the street, I'm good. Like, I have the confidence that I can control that situation. But that's, how often does that happen? Maybe once in your life, twice in your life, if you're like hanging out with the wrong crowd, right? But like, that's not the important part about jiu-jitsu. The important part about jiu-jitsu is, taking the grit that you learn on the mat, the lessons that you learn on the mat, and reapplying it to the rest of your life, so that you can go out into your community, into your whatever different communities you belong to, whether it's business, social, family, and helping those people out as well. And, all ships rise, right? So, hopefully, if you haven't thought about jiu-jitsu in this way, having this little discussion will help you start to kind of take that different perspective, that different look at jiu-jitsu, and you'll really start to feel like that active application of the lessons you learn on the mat, off the mat, and use that self-reflection to help improve your life and everybody else's life. So, cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
We'll just give a little clap here, just to finish it off, right?